What does leadership look like when your bottom line is about dignity and opportunity, not just dollars? Welcome to Leading Through Growth, the podcast where we explore how leaders lead at the intersection of purpose, progress, and people. I'm your host, Thom Campbell, CEO of Stella Nova Coaching. Today's guest is Amelia Nickerson, CEO of First Step Staffing, a successful and growing nonprofit staffing agency providing employment opportunities to individuals facing significant barriers to work, namely homelessness and involvement with the justice system. We're going to talk about what it takes to lead a mission-driven organization, how to build a resilient, values-based culture while growing really fast, and what leadership really looks like when more than the company's bottom line is on the line. Good morning, Amelia.
Good morning. Thanks so much for having me.
You're very welcome. I'm so glad you're here. You have taken over this organization in the last 5 years.
Yeah.
And in our earlier conversation, you told me that one of the hardest parts of this job is managing people. And your management, your previous management of people, you come from a fundraising background, was only two people. And now you've got an organization that literally has thousands of people. True. Talk about what that means for you as a leader.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely was a big change for me, and I think my leadership style evolves almost daily as I figure out new things about myself and about the organization. But I mean, I hear it said over and over and over again, whether you're in nonprofit or for-profit or government, you know, people is what makes the culture of an organization, and getting the people right is really important, and not just the right people, but getting the right people in the right seats so you can really lean into people's strengths and bring in kind of where you need that additional support. Obviously, I don't think any leader can be all things to all people, so you need to surround yourself with the people that complement kind of where you might be lacking or may not be as highly trained in. And so I've really tried to do that with the group that we have here at First Step. I have some amazing staff working at First Step, some of which have been here close to a decade or longer, so you know that they know the organization and you know that they're committed to the mission, and really having open communication with them. I believe in bringing my team in to be part of decision making. I don't lead a dictatorship. I've worked under some that do have that leadership style and knew that that was not what I wanted to do. So ultimately, as the CEO, I know kind of final, particularly harder decisions rest on me, and I might have to make final call, but I never do that in a vacuum, and I want to have open dialogue with, you know, the rest of the C-suite on down to our receptionist, understanding what this organization is about, and we do that through as much communication as I can do, formally and informally with the staff.
You came in at a particularly hard time.
Yeah, trial by fire.
February of 2020?
Yeah, just about, yes.
So you came in February of 2020. You came in after the long-term founder of the organization, a man of quite a lot of vision, had rolled off and was ill, and he died later that year.
Yeah.
There was an interim CEO that wasn't building a very positive culture, I think. What did you tell me he said about HR?
HR professionals may cause HR problems.
HR people cause HR problems.
Yes.
Of all the quotes I've heard, that's one. So what was it about that environment, really, that tested you the most?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely, coming into a CEO role in 2020, anytime that year was going to be a trial by fire for folks. And I've talked to several other peers in the industry who came online at about the same time. So we were in a transition period. First Step had been through tremendous growth. I mean, just astronomical, growing from one location to 5, acquiring 3 sets of businesses and going from $2 million in revenue to over $50 million in revenue, all within a pretty short time frame. We had been through leadership transitions and had an interim CEO, and at the same time, our founder was battling stage 4 cancer. And then layer on top of that, we had COVID hit, which affected everybody. It affected our business, but also was affecting the people that we serve kind of the most substantially in our economy. And we saw that play out for several years and are still kind of dealing with some of the fallout. So 2020 was trial by fire. I think I had to lean into it in a few different ways. One, I had a great team, particularly my COO, who is still with the organization. I think he and I share the same brain a lot of times, and
That's
having
awesome.
somebody to help make difficult decisions, to keep all the parts of the organization running, to really make sure that I understood what needed to happen from a business perspective. I mean, at the end of the day, we are a 501c3, but we're running a very substantial staffing business, and to understand what that meant. So I found an amazing group. I work with a gentleman named Thom Campbell, who runs an organization called the Vices Group for the staffing industry, and was able to find some peers out there who were dealing with the same problems, looking for similar opportunities to be able to bounce ideas and questions off of. So my mode of operation still to this day is ask questions. And I oftentimes will talk to people and say, explain to me like I'm a kindergartner. Like, tell me the basics of what I need to understand here, to really make sure that I can wrap my arms around it. So lots of questions, peer leaders, and really figuring out a way to navigate through 2020. And at the same time, taking over from a founder who did unfortunately pass away in August of 2020, had a very specific vision for the organization. And he and I did talk about that he said to me one time when we were meeting up, he said, listen, I know that your vision might be different than my vision, but I care more that you have a vision, that this organization can continue and still make an impact on the world and can continue to do good things when I'm no longer here. And, his vision at the time with his, disease, he knew he had a finite timeline and really focused on growing the breadth of the organization. How big could it get? How many people could we support every year? And I said, well, that's still really important, and we've continued to add cities in the last 5 years, but I also want to make sure we're focusing on depth, and that included kind of taking care of the internal team and the internal staff, making sure that we had the processes and procedures and the right people in the right seats to manage a $60+ million organization that was no longer a $2 million organization. But also when it came to mission, I really wanted to make sure that the jobs we were providing and that the mission of what First Step does could be transformational and not just transactional, and how we were going to take care of the whole person as they were coming to First Step, with jobs being at the center of it, but really looking at what else we could provide as an organization to make sure that people could make transformational change in their lives.
And you're taking care of not just the client employees, right?
Correct.
The 7,000 or 8,000 client employees that you have,
Yeah.
because they're all W-2.
Correct.
But you're also taking care of your internal staff, several dozen people. Your culture applies to both of those groups of people.
It does. So internally right now we have about just over 60 internal team members who are everything from our market leaders to our job coaches to the payroll team that's making sure we can pay, thousands of people on a weekly basis. But ultimately that 60 plus people has to help take care of close to 8,000 individuals a year who hopefully are having that transformational opportunity at First Step. And I think I've kind of seen it as my role to make sure that 60 plus people really have what they need, because they're the ones on the front line. Like, I get to work with a handful of our, participants. We call them our clients. I get to know some of them, particularly here in the Atlanta office where I'm based, because they're coming into the office. So I do get to kind of get to know some of them, which is amazing because they've got phenomenal stories and are some of the most resilient people you could ever meet in your entire life. But if I don't take care of my internal team, they can't take care of our clients. So I want to make sure that they feel like this is a place where they get rewarded for good work, where they have what they need to take care of their families. And that is everything from, our internal pay and what we're paying our staff, to introducing a 401k plan, making sure we've got decent health benefits, making sure people can take some mental health days to take a break, because this is hard work some days. So if I can help take care of our 60 plus internal team members, they will knock it out of the park with those 8,000 individuals we're helping every year.
What is when you think about the culture of an organization, when you think about the culture of the internal, the 65, 60 plus people, sometimes that culture, part of that culture is taking care of them, as you said,
Yeah.
401ks, opportunities for growth, opportunities for job promotion, that kind of thing. But
Yeah.
on a day-to-day basis, culture is about the interaction of people.
Hmm.
How do you maintain a positive culture in that way? Because there's a
Yeah.
lot of
And
pressure on what they do and what you do. And that
there
pressure
is.
can cause anxiety and can cause
Hmm.
unnecessary stress and conflict. So what do you do to make
Yeah.
sure that that positive culture stays positive?
Yeah, and obviously there is no like end game on this stuff. It's daily, and some days you do really well at it, and some days you have a really bad day. So it's a place of constant improvement. I will say, I think over the last 3, 4 years, I've kind of got a love hate relationship with the word culture because I think it gets thrown around a lot. And I always want the tangible. Like, tell me what that means. You want to have a positive culture. What does that mean?
Right.
Because everybody has, you're dealing with individuals and everybody's got, a different love language and a different way that they want to be kind of seen at the workplace. And some people really want to engage and some people want to come and do their job and then get a break and go home to family. So for me, it became around really creating tangible ways we could fold in kind of the culture that we wanted as an organization. We started a few years ago, and our chief mission officer really led the effort on this. Again, going back to having great team members.
First of all,
Um,
I want to say I love that you have a chief mission officer. I think that is absolutely perfect.
Now, listen, to be fair, Tom, that was a borrowed title, and in nonprofit land, that usually means you wear like 10 different hats, and Kelly does, and manages a lot for the organization. But, if we were going to have a chief operating officer to keep the wheels spinning and make sure payroll's done on time, we definitely, as a mission driven organization, need to make sure mission is staying forefront of our mind. So, now we have a chief mission officer. And she led some of the efforts of what I think is really helped to define our culture as an organization, and then continue to be a thought leader with me and the leadership team on what that means on those tangible things that we can do as an organization. So a few years ago, we updated our mission, vision, values. And, most of the time, those things are just words on paper. And half the time, nobody in the organization can tell you what they are.
Right.
And we were very much in that space. We had some very lengthy value statements that nobody at the organization, including myself, could tell you what they were without it being read off a piece of paper. So we did a lot of engagement with our staff so that they had buy-in on what they intended the culture of this workplace to be. And we landed on the acronym THRIVE. One, because that's what we're trying to help people do is lead thriving lives. But two, it helped us to really lean into those characteristics that we wanted to embody individually and as an organization. And now we recognize people for that. So teamwork, heart, resilience, integrity, vision, and empowerment are the things that we talk about
I
as
love
an
that you
organization.
engaged your staff and your team
Yes.
to come up with that because that is so important in the buy-in of any kind of direction.
It is, and we did, games around value systems. We did surveys. We did roundtables. We wanted to make sure that it wasn't a top-down approach. Particularly, I mean, yes, we're an sizable organization, but 60 plus people, you can have conversations with that. It's not like we've got to engage beyond 60 people. So it was a process, and now we do things like have a monthly Thrive Award winner who is peer nominated, who, if somebody has lived out one of those values in their day-to-day work or something that they're doing with our customers or our clients or our partners, then your peers can nominate you to get recognized for that, and they have to tell us what value and why and what the activity, so it becomes very tangible in what we mean by teamwork. What do we mean by heart? And we can talk about that on a regular basis, and that person gets raised up and they get a little award, they get recognized throughout the company, they get a gift certificate just to thank them for their service. So doing things like that, I think, is what helps make culture tangible for me.
Yeah.
And how we can bring that into our day-to-day work and not just a buzzword that becomes a catch-all.
Right, and you've operationalized it, in other words,
Yeah.
in terms of making sure that you bridge the gap between sort of the philosophical, ethereal component of culture and purpose and mission and what that means day to day, and engaging between people, because those relationships are what keeps everything you do moving.
Yes. Yeah.
What is the, I'm going to talk about mission-driven organizations for a minute, and everybody feels like they have a mission. You know,
Yeah.
General Motors has a mission. You know, but when you're dealing with a nonprofit, a real focused mission-driven nonprofit, what are the leadership challenges that come up that may not be there for, say, a for-profit business?
Yeah, I mean, because we do have it, we talk about it as a dual double line, bottom line, right? Like we've got to hit our financial performances, otherwise we cease to exist as an organization. You know, my former boss used to say that nonprofit was a tax status, not a way to do business, and I very much live by that mantra. You have to be able to perform well financially, or you won't accomplish anything because you won't exist. So we do run ourselves like a business. We look at our financials like a business. You do a cash flow projection, a pro forma, and understand very much, particularly at our leadership level, what our finances look like on a day-to-day basis. But at the same time, we're using kind of that financial business operation to fund the mission of what we do. And sometimes that means we have to be really good at saying no when something doesn't make sense for us as an organization, but also being kind of fearless at saying yes if something is going to really drive the mission forward, but maybe our net income goes down slightly the next year. I had a conversation with a few board members, and we were looking at our finances, as you do with your board members in a nonprofit, and we did have, a net income decrease. Nothing alarming, but, in for-profit business, that's a red flag.
Right.
And I said, yeah, that would be really cool if the point of what we were doing was to drive net income, but that's not the point. So as long as we're healthy and we understand our cash flow and our balance sheets, and we know what that means and where that money was going, if it drove the mission of what we're doing farther, then that's okay by me. So stay healthy, but it's okay to be kind of radically say yes sometimes.
And you can take that long-term view as a mission-driven, because of your tax status nonprofit. You're a private nonprofit. You don't have shareholders. You don't have investors, right? And so,
Well, that is where First Step is a little unique. Just to clarify, we do have investors. Part of our growth strategy was the acquisition of for-profit staffing companies.
okay,
So we bought a book of business and took on. Now they are social impact investors, so they also are investing in that dual bottom line. They want a healthy balance sheet. We have loan covenants we have to meet as an organization, and we have to continue to pay off that debt. But at the same time, we're presenting our, financial audit. We're also presenting a report on how many individuals we helped that
I
year
see.
and what it meant in their lives. So our investors are also dual focused,
okay.
but they also ask for those balance sheets, Tom. So that's why I say we got to do a little bit of both.
And I think about the some of the problems in the for-profit world these days is because of that sort of rapid cycle requirement to have a profit every quarter. Got to have a profit every quarter.
Yeah.
You got to improve your bottom line every quarter. You have a different timeline.
We do. I mean, and I think I was speaking with a group of for-profit CEOs the other day, and somebody told me a stat. I haven't fact-checked this, but that there was something like an average of most CEOs, particularly at Fortune 500 kind of level organizations, had a 3-year run rate.
Wow.
You've got 3 years, and then people might be making a change. So you have a very short window to kind of prove your value and to produce the bottom line that those investors and those shareholders want. And it's really hard to do that in 3 years. So I do think kind of having a longer term runway and an outlook on what we want to achieve as an organization helps with us with that, both financial planning and mission planning on what we can achieve. But I think it goes back to what I said earlier. You have to be very good at saying no when things don't make sense, and there can be a lot of mission creep in the nonprofit sector. We get asked to do a lot of things that aren't necessarily core to what we're trying to
Yeah.
achieve. But we also have to be fearlessly saying yes, and not being afraid to open a new market, or not being afraid to try a new program that we think is going to be really impactful for the people we're hoping to help, and be able to understand where that balance of, the try try and fail fast if necessary
Right.
model.
And don't be afraid to say no, but don't be afraid to
Yeah.
take a fearless yes approach either.
Yeah, and we've had plenty that we've tried and failed. We've had new markets we've tried to launch that didn't work out, and we were able to pull back and understand what our investment was there. And then we've tried things that were, even our founder's idea of doing this acquisition model as a nonprofit was pretty insane at the time.
Right. You're in seven
Nobody
states now. You're in.
We are, yeah. We're in 7 states and growing. We went from hiring 100 people a year to 8,000 people a year. From 2 million in revenue to over 60 million in revenue. So, but getting there was not without its challenges, and it took a fearlessness of saying yes and really pushing and understanding what that meant and for that to be successful.
But making sure that fearless yes was solidly in your core.
Yeah.
Right. That's
Yep.
that's amazing. That's amazing. I
Yeah.
love that. I mean, I've worked in nonprofits most of my career, if not all of my career, if I think about it.
Yeah.
And understanding that there's this, I don't know how to call it, an acceptance of less than quality. You know what I mean? Like, oh, we're a nonprofit, we don't have to do that well, or it's okay, we're a
Right.
nonprofit, and that's
Yeah.
it's not okay.
It's not okay, and we're doing a disservice to the people that the nonprofit sector is intending to help.
Yeah.
And in fact, part of my attempt at leadership, as I was wrapping my heads around what it meant to lead an organization like this, was creating kind of a personal theme for myself. So beyond our mission, vision, values, which is wraps into everything that we do. I had a theme for every year since I've taken over as CEO of what the organization was going to focus on that year. And this year's theme is the discipline of excellence.
Discipline of
Because
excellence.
we could continue to grow. We had introduced a tremendous amount of new programming that allowed us to provide housing assistance and financial literacy and upskilling and things that the organization was not doing prior to COVID, which have been phenomenal. But we needed to make sure we were doing everything really well. And even though we are a nonprofit by tax status, we needed to operate with the utmost excellence to ensure that we were providing excellent customer service, communication, that our marketing materials were the best that they could be, so that we could really present ourselves to the world in the best possible light, which means we can help more people and do it better.
Right.
So yeah, I'm a full believer. Like I said, nonprofit is a tax status, not a way to do business and not a way to operate. You don't get to use that as an excuse not to do really well.
How do you think, through all of this, say 6 years ago, from 6 years ago to today, a lot has changed for you. A lot has changed
Yes.
for you personally. A lot has changed for your organization. But
Yeah.
how have you personally grown or changed as a leader in this context during the last 6 years?
I mean, I do think the longer I've been in this seat, the more comfortable and confident that I've gotten. But I still do what I've always done from the beginning, which is ask questions, get buy-in from people that are experts in their field. Don't assume I know everything. In fact, I assume I know nothing when I walk into a room and need people to explain what's happening. And surround myself with great people, and that's personally and professionally. So having a really good team here at First Step, but also, great husband and friends and peers I can call on who are not in this industry to kind of be a sounding board. So I think it's important to have those people in your life too, particularly in a leadership position. Sometimes it can get lonely, and there's not always somebody you can talk to about every single thing, because ultimately those hard decisions are going to rest on your shoulders. And I think having a personal, board of directors that you can go to, and friends that you can lean on during those times is really important.
Well, what strikes me is that, I mean, what you're talking about, what you're describing is a lack of an ego in that sense.
Yeah.
And
I have zero, because again, I assume I know nothing.
well, and
So-
and I had that thought when you were describing the founder too.
Yeah.
The founder often founders, especially founders of nonprofits, will come in and and the entire organization will be sort of wrapped around their personality.
Yep.
And when I don't know how many nonprofits go out of business because the founder leaves or retires or dies or
Yeah.
and he it sounds like he took the approach of your vision is your vision and that's important. My vision got us to where we are now, but that's where it stops.
Yeah.
So that's an amazing what is I'm curious, what do you think the role of or the danger of ego is in that sense?
I mean, I think you just said it, particularly in newer organizations, whether it be a for-profit or nonprofit, if it's so wrapped up in the founder, it can't exist beyond the founder. When the founder leaves, the entity no longer exists, and can't sustain that. And, that's around the vision, that's around getting work done. Like if they assume they have to be part of every decision, and nothing can happen without their stamp of approval, then you're going to be stuck within a box that has been defined by that founder or that CEO. So I think that there's a lot that is detrimental if you're only dealing within kind of an egocentric system and not understanding that the organization has to live beyond it. And we've, had work to do. We had to update our board of directors. We still have many of the early founders, friends, and family on our board so that they can see that that vision is living past, but are very open to being part of what First Step is in the future. So I think even having the founder's friends and family on our board, his wife is on our board, who wants to lend her help, but understands the organization has to continue to evolve.
Right.
So,
And that it takes a strong person to sort of let
Yeah.
go of that.
yeah, I will say the things I think that we've retained so far are his entrepreneurial spirit, because our founder was an entrepreneur in every sense of the word. And we've attempted to maintain a lot of that in the way that we operate, and being fearless and trying new things and being kind of at the leading of a pack of kind of different ways of thinking about this industry. So we've definitely done that. And then he, again, he was fearless in his yes, and he said, let's try it. Let's see if we can do this. And if we can't, at least we can say we did. So we've definitely continued to embody that as part of his spirit.
That is amazing. What's the future hold for you and for First Step?
Well, I know I'm not done, so I think there's still a lot this organization can do. We've, again,
Yeah,
seen a lot of
but you've been there
growth.
more than 3 years. You're not done?
I'm not done. So I think this organization can continue to do a lot when it comes to growth. So we're still looking at new markets and expansion and what that looks like as the organization is trying to reach more people. I think we can continue to fine tune what started with that depth of service, and what does that need to look like from a sustainability standpoint. At this point, our organization runs between 90 and 95% on earned revenue, which is fairly unusual in the nonprofit sector. But we want to make sure that we're building an organization that can live well past me and my COO and my chief mission officer. And when we are on to other things, we don't want this organization to die after us either. So we need to make sure we're building towards that. I haven't I've danced around with what kind of that, North Star of our achievement will be. And I haven't quite landed on the thing that is going to be that North Star yet, whether it's size or scope or just number of lives impacted. But I think we're not done, and we've got a lot of good that we've accomplished, and we're going to do a whole lot more. And in the meantime, I've got 3 children that I get to see and participate in their exciting lives, and want to be there
Three
for them
teenagers,
and get
I think, right?
3 teenagers, yes. So lives are busy, and I want to be there and present for that too.
Yeah, absolutely. And what about your leadership? Where do you see yourself growing in new ways? Maybe where would you like to grow in new ways?
I mean, I think one thing I know that I've wanted to work on, again, I've always been kind of the open dialogue and having those. I haven't always had as much structure around how to do that in an organization that is growing. So it's very easy for me to walk into the office next door and talk to my COO. But making sure that I've set time on the calendar to talk to all of our market leaders, that I've got standing appointments with kind of leaders in the industry to make sure that I'm staying on top of what's happening in the marketplace. So for me as a leader, I know that kind of structure is a thing that I want to help put in place, because without it, we're going to hit a tipping point where I can't really lead into the next phase of growth without some of that structure. I don't know. I feel like I'm a constant sponge, Tom. Like I love talking to other leaders. I love talking to other CEOs. I love hearing about their experiences and like the worst failures that they had and what they learned from it, because I think it helps me move past my failures faster. And everybody's got them. Like there's something, especially in this industry,
Yeah.
nonprofit or not, like there is something to be dealt with almost on a daily basis. But being able to take the broader picture and kind of work through those challenges and failures and being more confident every time you do that, I think will be part of my ongoing story. Just gaining confidence on managing through
Yeah,
chaos.
that fearless failure almost.
Yeah.
So there's some hot take questions I have for you.
Okay.
So, what's something that about social enterprises that most people get wrong?
Well, I mean, again, I think people don't understand that nonprofits and social enterprises are businesses and need to act as such. We get asked all the time, well, how can you do that as a nonprofit? Do you get paid? How do you pay people? I'm like, well, it's a business. So I think understanding that, yes, there may be a dual purpose to it and that double bottom line we talked
Right.
about, but whether you're working in a social enterprise or looking to partner or hire a social enterprise, understand that they still have to meet their bottom lines and have to operate as a business. We get asked all the time by some pretty large employers if we can provide them staff for free. And I said, nope, it's a staffing business. I'm happy to give you a contract. But like, well, aren't you a nonprofit? Can't you just send us people? I could, but then I'd be out of business.
Right.
So I think understanding that social enterprises are in of themselves a business, and they're an important business in our economies.
Do you think the nonprofit sector is too comfortable playing small when it comes to solving systemic issues?
On a broader scale, I think yes. Or I think people only look in their neighborhoods and don't always see the bigger picture. So they see their part of what they do. They rely very much on philanthropy. There becomes a unnecessary competitiveness when it comes to that philanthropy. And sometimes nonprofit leaders don't want to ask themselves the hard question of if the nonprofit itself needs to exist or if the work could be done better through mergers, partnerships, or maybe there's another entity that's just doing it better and providing resources to that group.
Right.
So I think sometimes we create unnecessary competition in the nonprofit sector versus working together to solve a collective problem.
Is there a common piece of leadership advice that doesn't work in a mission-driven business or a social enterprise?
No, I mean, I think if you take away like the purpose of building bottom line income and understand that you're going to have to make decisions that affect those financials in a different way, but I don't know that it's a leadership. I think if you're talking about great leaders can be great leaders at the Fortune 500, can be great leaders at the nonprofit sector if they understand the purpose of the organization. So I think too often, I've seen this too, where you've been a leader in a pretty high profile position at a for-profit company and think you're going to come do some easy work in your retirement and move to the nonprofit sector, and then they realize it's actually twice as hard because you're trying to do twice as much with half as much. So the nonprofit sector is a hard place to work, and I think, but great leaders are great leaders. So I don't know that there's anything that wouldn't apply other than the misconception that nonprofits work less or aren't as hard to run as a for-profit business. They're oftentimes harder.
Is it harder to build a good culture or protect and strengthen a good culture?
Protect and strengthen. I think if you've got the right people on the bus and the right seats, you can build what you need, but you're going to be fighting to protect it every day because there's going to be internal and external influences that are trying to to strip away at it. And you have to do that daily work, like you said, on that communication, on really defining what you mean from a tangible, side of things, of what culture actually means in the day-to-day of an organization. And if you take your eye off the ball, what you've built will disappear overnight.
I think that's a really powerful insight. Yeah. And my last hot take question, tap dancing, fun or silly?
Most fun ever. Most fun thing that I've ever done. I took tap for over 20 years. It is still a fun way for me to go burn some calories and take my mind off work. So, never silly. Never.
I told you I did a little digging on you online.
Yeah.
Amelia, thank you so much for being here today, joining the podcast. I can't thank Stephen enough for introducing us.
Yeah.
And I'm really, really grateful for your presence today and your participation and the insight that you brought. What is one thing that you would want people who have heard this podcast, what would you like them to remember?
Ask questions. I don't care what role you are at an organization. Don't assume you know the answers. Whether you're starting, in your first week or you're the CEO 20 years running, keep asking questions.
I love that. Thank you. So, thank you again. Thank you for joining us, Amelia, on Leading Through Growth and sharing your honesty, your vulnerability, your lack of ego, and your insight. And thank you for everybody else who is listening today. If you're thinking about leadership, culture, or how to build organizations that actually make a difference, I hope this gave you something you can chew on. And I'll put more information about Amelia and First Step Staffing in the show notes. And if you like this episode, please share it, follow, and glad to have you. I'm Thom Campbell, and I'll see you next time at the intersection of purpose, progress, and people.